Hey, what's going on, everybody, and welcome back to my channel, Movie Files. Elliot back again with my weekly recap, breakdown, and review of the latest episode of Hulu's Nine Perfect Strangers. Today, we'll be breaking down episode 5, which is titled Sweet Surrender, and I'm just going to say it right now. To me, personally, out of the 5 episodes, this is the best episode by far, and we're talking thoughts, we're talking theories, especially with that last scene that we got in this episode. We're going to break it all down here in the spoiler review, but before we do so, make sure you're checking me out on all my other social media accounts. If you all are new to the channel, well, welcome to the community. Consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell. That way you all can get the alert for when I drop new content. If you all enjoyed this spoiler review of episode 5 of 9 Perfect Strangers, well, make sure to like the video and share the video. It helps out the channel a lot, but I also appreciate all the support. And in those comments, let's talk and let's break it all down. This episode 5, I personally, and I'll get into it here in a second, but I thought this was the most, it has its flaws, don't get me wrong, but I thought this had the most development, the most depth. And then the question that is posed to us at the end of this episode with hallucinations and Zoe being the key, are we dealing with some supernatural situations? Let me know your pros, your cons, your thoughts, your theories, and everything in between in the comments below. So let me just jump right into it. Like I said, I think this is the best episode so far. It still has its flaws regarding to, I still feel like there's characters in the show that I don't care about and I don't even know why they're on the show. I still feel like there are some incomplete scenes, but even regardless of that stuff that I saw in this episode, there was still more depth to the characters. There was still more development in the characters. And then that question that's posed to us, what is Zoe? Why is she the key? How is she able to see as a hallucination of her brother Zach? Are we dealing with people dying and coming back to life with this drug that Masha has them on? There's just so much going in my head right now. We're going to break it all down. But again, I think this is the best episode, but I want to know your thoughts in the comment section. So let's break it all down, starting off with the opening scene here as we see this flashback of Masha and one of her old guests dying, which brings me to this drug. Is this part of the drug? Eventually, you go through the honeymoon stages, you have these dreams, hallucinations, what's real, what's fake, you're feeling happy about yourself, and then you die. And then you die and you're reborn a new person. We'll get to that a little bit later, but we see that Yao is there and Delilah was there, and we cut to her having this kind of moment in the pool, and she comes out and she's apologizing to them for them having to witness that, which we'll talk about their freaky, weird love triangle later in this episode. But cut to Zoe, speaking of dreams and hallucinations, she's having this real dream almost, right, where she sees her brother Zach live in the flesh, and she's having this conversation with him as he tells her, why are you telling people that we weren't close when we really were? She goes into her being lonely because obviously this is her celebrating her 21st birthday, and then that's kind of cut short because it's daytime now. She's woken up, her mom comes in, they're having a conversation, but then we get this really kind of, I think, a really good heartfelt moment. There's a lot of heartfelt moments in this episode, and this is one of them as we see Michael Shannon, who I've been mentioning these last few weeks. Some of these characters feel a little bit hollow to me, but I have to say Napoleon and Michael Shannon personally, I think he's outperforming everyone in this show, and this is one of the examples when he comes in and just seeing this side of Michael Shannon. I've seen a lot of his movies and shows, and just seeing this kind of lightheartedness to him and seeing this kind of him being his dad has been really refreshing. And as he's singing and all that, I'm just thinking to myself, this is a really genuine moment. But is this genuine? Is this the side effects of the drug of making him, being this more happy, loving father, or is it just part of his personality? So let me know, because the very next shot, we see the employees making the smoothie. So let me know, was that a genuine moment, that Napoleon, or is it a side effect of the drug, just taking advantage of, whatever's going on, the chemicals of the drug? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. But cut to the morning, everyone in the crew happy being on the drugs, like, hey, whatever the drugs is, we want more of it. And again, we'll talk about the side effects here, but we go into Napoleon talking about, again, how happy he is. He had this really good dream of him being a part of the Beatles, and as he's describing it, we see Carmel is upset because the song he's talking about was a song that was played at her wedding. We see Lars talking about he had a baby with Tony, a beautiful baby boy, and just, again, it's just like, these are the early stages of the side effects. You feel good, you have these dreams, what's real, what's fake, but then a perfect example of how, like, deadly these drugs can be, because everyone has chemical, like, effects to these drugs, and we see Frances has this real life situation almost play out where she is told that Paul is there, and we see the whole scene play out, which I'm like, is this real or fake? And ultimately it's a dream. But we see Paul telling her that he goes to her because she lacks creativity, and I think this is just kind of her inner subconscious kind of speaking out to how she feels about herself. But Masha comes into the dream, says kill him, and then she ultimately wakes up. But again, I think this is just the side effects of this drug, and I think some of these characters are going to have worse side effects than others, and we'll talk about what those side effects can potentially lead to as we see. I think another side of the side effects is when you stop taking the drug. As we see Delilah, she tells Tony about himself, that she tells him to go F off, and she kind of quickly collects herself. But I think this episode is really shining a light on when you're using the drugs, how it can make you feel, but then when you're off of it, how it can make you feel, and we're seeing everything in between. So we'll talk about that a little bit later, and my thoughts about what this drug can maybe do to the characters a little bit later. But moving forward, and I've been talking about this since episode 1, we get these intimate, quiet moments with Tony and Francis in this episode, and this is one of them here as he's taking her to the bedroom after she fainted and put her face right into her oatmeal. But they have a quiet moment, but that's unfortunately kind of cut short because she's throwing up. But that, like I said, we've been talking about it since week 1. They're ultimately going to end up as a couple, or maybe one of them is going to die before that actually happens. But nonetheless, we cut to this super weird relationship here between Masha and Delilah as they're having a conversation with Masha, again, apologizing to her about what she witnessed about that guest who died, who I'm just thinking right now, I think that guy died not due to old age or like a pre-existing, health issue. I think that it's what the drug that they're giving them. I think that it's the result of the drug. I think eventually after a certain amount of days, after their 9 days on this island, whatever, you get this effect where it kills you, and then you're in death, you're reborn, or in some cases maybe you don't come back to life. And we'll talk about maybe that guy is the one that's texting Masha because he died and doesn't like what it did to him. He didn't come back a new person. We'll get to that a little bit later, but it's in this conversation that Delilah says that, oh yeah, I'm back on the drugs, but we know that she's not. And I think that, as Masha says, it's very dangerous and a major side effects if you don't continue the dosage. So again, this is foreshadowing about, again, what happens when you stay the course and what happens when you don't stay the course. And I think we're going to see all that kind of play out in the coming weeks. But we get this interesting conversation, and then we go to this weird relationship as it's kind of revealed that Delilah and Masha have hooked up in the past. As Delilah kisses her, she says, "Don't tell Yao." And she says, I'll never tell them, because Delilah wants her to stop having sex with Yao, but they've had sex before. So again, this relationship is extremely weird, and I'm starting to think that Delilah and Yao maybe have died and have been brought back to life, and that's why they covet Masha so much. Let me know your thoughts on that theory there. But moving forward, this is what I meant by character development in depth, because this was literally the exact same scene last week when we have we have Lars and Zoe in there, meditating and talking. And last week it was just cut short. We didn't hear any more. It was just like we're in and out. But this scene, we actually got to breathe and got to hear the characters hear and talk about their emotions. We hear Lars talk about his, the reason he had a dream about a baby is because his not having a baby was one of the reasons why he broke up with his boyfriend. He goes into this whole backstory about his dad leaving his family because he was gay. I'm like, this is great stuff here. This is what makes character development so important, to have these scenes have a moment to breathe. And like I said, unlike last week where we just cut to another character, we hear Zoe's rebuttal. She goes back and kind of goes into her feelings, right, about her not being alone, having Lars as a friend to vent to and to talk to. And that to me is so important to build these characters and make me as an audience care for these characters, unlike the previous 4 episodes where it's just like, okay, we're going here, we're bound here, we're bound here. They actually let us sit in the scene. I really appreciated that moment because it allows you to care for these characters, which brings us to a not a really in-depth scene, but we get to see the parents of Zoe, obviously Napoleon and Heather, have a moment where they get into a little bit of a fight, but they ultimately both jump off of the ledge to kind of, again, release himself of the pressures of their son dying. So again, and then that scene wasn't as in-depth as the previous one, but at least we get that moment with seeing them kind of having that moment as a couple, and them how they're handling the 21st birthday of their son who took their life. So we cut to another interesting scene with Lars as he's on the phone. Again, I assume this is him with the whole paper situation, but he goes on the phone and says that, yeah, we're definitely on drugs, and we're definitely, being given these drugs. And I assume, like I said, this is a conversation he's having regarding his article about Tranquillum. But again, who's on the other side of the line? Is it the person that's threatening Masha? Let's talk about that in the comment section. But let's go to this quick scene, but a very weird scene, as we see this sex scene between Delilah and Yao as they're having sex with their hands. Again, the weirdness between the couples is just kind of beyond weird. But speaking of weird, we see Masha get this text message, which I think was a dead cow, and the person says in text message that you're next. Again, is that message from the guy that died that we saw in the flashback? Is it a previous employee that is upset about what she's doing? Is it Lars? Is it the person Lars was on the phone with? Or I'll get to my theory a little bit later, and I said it last week, is it Masha? And I'll get to my thoughts on Masha maybe texting herself. But nonetheless, moving to the pointless characters I mentioned earlier in the review. These are the pointless characters. I don't even know why they're on the show, as we see Ben and Jessica having a conversation about them going back to the past and before they had the money. I'm just like, guys, Samara Weaving and the actor that plays Ben, listen, you guys are probably good. I love Samara Weaving. I've seen a couple of the gentleman that plays Ben, but I just think that they are the most pointless characters, and they take away from other characters having a moment to kind of shine and having a moment to then develop. I literally do not care about Ben and Jessica. Is it me, or let me know if you guys feel the same way? But nonetheless, moving forward, we see again another intimate moment between Tony and Frances as he's again venting to her about his feelings. And he mentions in this conversation that I don't think I'm going to last the end of the week or at the end of the year, alluding to him maybe taking his own life, which again kind of feels like an incomplete scene because they kind of ended on like a moment where it's just like, I'm worried about you and I want you to know I'm worried about you. And then it just kind of cuts and it's just like, can we dive a little bit deeper into him talking about taking his life? But no, we shift to another scene. So that's another example how I feel like sometimes, perfect example of Lars and Zoe having that in-depth conversation, but then this is another example, just like incomplete scenes, which is like, let's dive deeper into that, but they just cut short, unfortunately, in that moment. But transition to Carmel and her seeing Ben and Jessica having sex in the pool, and this is an example of a good scene because we see Carmel's upset. We see Lars actually giving her good advice about how beautiful she is, how she's a great catch for anyone out there, and she should just look for someone else and kind of leave her past behind. And that was really good for that character Lars, because everything so far from Lars, besides this episode, he's been an asshole, right? So I thought that was a perfect example of two characters who have been at flawing with each other, back and forth with each other since the very first episode, but having him tell her that was a really good moment for them. And again, this is one of two moments where I feel like I felt the heart, I felt the trueness and the depth of that conversation between those two characters. So that was a good example, and this is one of many that I thought that this episode really shined a light on, giving these actors some good stuff to play with, and this was an example of that. So as we wrap up the episode, we see Zoe celebrating her birthday with everyone. She gives a speech about how she feels like everyone's a part of her family now, which is kind of weird because she's only talking to like two of the characters besides her family, but neither here nor there. She feels like the people on the island is a part of her family now, and we get this moment of Napoleon singing and everyone's dancing, and this is where things get very interesting. So as the episode ends, we see Masha like in shock. She's looking at Zoe. She walks up to her and whispers in her ears, "He's here, isn't he? You can see him. It's you. You are the key." End of the episode. So let's rewind that conversation. Masha sees that Zoe's looking off to the whatever, and she just assumes that she sees her brother Zach, which she sees her brother, but we know Zach's dead. So this goes back to my thoughts and my theories and my predictions about the weeks ahead dealing with the supernatural. I believe that this drug that she has them on will kill them eventually. Then it might be one of the side effects that when you come back a newer person. You fulfilled now. You feel the happiness, or you end up like the guy who may have died, or you end up like the guy who might be texting her who did die and doesn't like the side effects. So are we diving into the supernatural, or am I overthinking this? Is it just part of the side effects of her really not seeing her? But what does it mean that she's the key to the situation, that she can see her dead brother? I don't know, man. Again, I think that this is part of the side effects is once you take these drugs that you will inevitably die, but you're supposed to come back a new person, but sometimes that doesn't work. And I think that might be who that person is texting her. It might be that guy who died, and maybe he didn't come back a new person, or it might be a family member of his that feels hatred towards her for killing her husband, right? So much in my mind, I'm thinking that, okay, is Delilah dead? Is Yao dead? We know that Masha died and came back, and is she like killing these people to be reborn a new person. Again, my mind's just like, okay, where are we at? But again, I think this was easily the best episode. The writing was strong. I mentioned the depth, the character development. I mentioned this, the side effects of the drug and the supernatural elements that the show might be introducing. So episode 5, easily the best episode of the show. And I hope this is just a continuation. Episode 6, 7, and 8 just gets better and better and better. Fingers crossed. But like I said, I enjoyed this episode a lot, but I want to know what you thought of this episode. Your pros, your cons, your thoughts, your theories. Can we get rid of Ben and Jessica? I mentioned the drug and maybe killing them. Can we just kill those characters off? But nonetheless, let me know your thoughts on this episode. If you stuck around to this point in the video, thank you so much. If you haven't already, make sure to like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. That way you don't miss any of my other content. Hope you all are staying safe. Hope you enjoyed this review, and we'll see you in the next video.